We have a full room after lunch. That is always encouraging. Sometimes you have to go back and drag people away from their sandwiches, which is never a pretty sight. Right, let's move on with our second panel of the day here on stage one here at Sustainability Live London 2024. This is the AI in Sustainability panel, and we have an absolutely fantastic panel who I'll introduce now. On the far side, we have Faith Taylor, SVP Sustainability, ESG and Impact at Kyndryl. We have Daniel Schmidt, welcome him back, Chief Sustainability Officer at SAP. We have Adam Ellman, Head of Sustainability at EMEA at Google. And closest to me, we have Sophie Graham, Chief Sustainability Officer at IFS. A warm welcome for our panel, please. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We've got lots to get through, not much time to do it in. So I'm going to start with examples, because that's always a place I like to go. And from your experience, where is AI making the most impact for sustainability? And Faith, I'll start with you, please.
Sure. So I'm with Kyndryl, and we spun off from IBM about 3 years ago, and we have over 230 data centers. And if I look at where I see AI being implemented, we've been doing that for many, many years. As you know, when you look at data centers, AI and machine learning has been used in data centers. And so therefore, what I see is that that's the first place that many companies are utilizing AI. But then they're using it also in terms of migrating to the cloud or also doing data analytics and consolidating information with regards to AI. So I'm using it from a legacy perspective, that's where it started, and now you're starting to get into the generative AI, predictive analytics, and that's how it's being used from my perspective, and it's growing.
Thank you. Daniel, come to you next.
Ask the question if AI was used or was not used in the food supply, because that seems to be a challenge here, just between you and me. That might be a use case to better manage supply and demand, and that is valid in all aspects when it comes to energy systems and so on.
But I got a Kit Kat for lunch, that's it.
But when it comes to what are the current challenges companies have, and there's these extreme dynamics when it comes to regulation, and people like me having experts, you would like to use the experts to add value to the business and not just fulfilling this alphabet soup of reporting. So AI can be a great beneficial tool to bring down the manual efforts, like we just integrated in our Sustainability Control Tower solution, which is a solution enabling you to have the full transparency across all the ESG dimensions, fulfilling the internal reporting needs, but as well fulfilling the external reporting needs. And there, an AI generator reporting tool is embedded, and that brings down the manual efforts by up to 80% and allowing the time to have the time for the experts really to use, bringing in the business value.
Adam?
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. At Google, we think we have a unique opportunity to help lead the transition to a more sustainable future by using AI to help transform climate information into actionable insights, whilst also driving innovation. And actually, the opportunity is huge here, and we did some work with BCG last year that identified existing AI use cases, solutions, if scaled, could reduce global GHG emissions by up to 10%. That's the same as the emissions from the EU. And lots of different areas, but in particular around information, prediction, and optimization. So just to give you one example, and I think, as I say, there's lots of areas where AI can do things we do today and do it much better. I really like the things where AI is coming in and solving for something that wasn't possible before. So we've been working with the aviation sector. So flying may not be the most sustainable form of transport, but often the only way to get around. And actually, those thin white lines you often see in the sky, those are called contrails, they actually count for 35% of the emissions from flying. So after fuel, it's the next biggest thing. And we've been able to use AI and geospatial capability to basically predict when contrails will occur. And we've tested this in the real world with American Airlines, and we were able to reduce contrails by 54%. So that's huge. And now we're working with Eurocontrols, who control most of the EU airspace, to roll that out. So I think it's a great example of where AI is solving a huge challenge, which couldn't have been done before.
great example. Sophie.
So thank you for having me. And IFS provides enterprise software across asset and service. And in particular, when we look at AI, we think about industrial AI and how the application of that can result in sustainability benefits. So if anyone was just in the last talk on engines, you can think about, there's such a big role for those quick wins with energy efficiency gains on assets like engines. And that's where we see tools such as predictive maintenance coming in, with the potential to save up to 30% of energy use by optimizing the energy efficiency of that asset, forecasting faults, and predictive maintenance will really allow us to extend the life of that asset and make sure it's performing at maximum energy efficiency. So that's one really strong potential for me.
That's another good example. So do carry on.
You asked the question about great use cases. But when I talk to people, the first thing they confronted me with is the huge energy consumption being caused by AI. So we needed, and we just talked about that, we need to address as well the risk side. So definitely there are great opportunities, and AI is needed to overcome the challenges we have in society and from a planetary perspective. But we should touch as well on the risk perspective. And one element is the huge energy consumption. And what I learned is, maybe you correct me, but if you feed and train a system, an AI system, you do that by loading mass data. Yeah, as more data is in the system, as better the response of the system is, and that is the energy critical part. And here I reached out to my colleagues from the Business AI Union saying, hey, what about loading these data in times where we have a lot of renewable energy in the grid, when energy intense industries are shutting down their production over the weekend or so, and they said, oh, wow, that makes sense. Yeah, why not doing that in these times where we have a lot of renewable energy available? But as well, not only the energy topic, as well the human rights topic. I learned through the application of the, what we call in Germany, Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz. It's one word. So it's the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, and we have the same then on EU level or in the UK Modern Slavery Act. I learned that there are people sitting there in front of screens seeing super, super ugly things in order that we don't see it. Under extreme working conditions in Kenya or in the Philippines, not having the mental health support, how to deal with these pictures they are seeing, in order that we don't see it. So it's a huge human rights topic as well in AI. And then overall, the ethical use of it, yeah, for the good and not for the bad.
I'm very, very glad that word wasn't on my script, because I would have struggled desperately, Daniel. But let's stay with this. This is where I was going to take things next. There is the flip side. There's a lot of positives, but we've got to view both sides. And who would like to pick up on there? Any other concerns, really, apart from the obvious energy use? I'll throw that open to the whole panel.
Absolutely. So, I think at the end of the day, AI, needs to have data center and cloud to execute, right? And where does that energy come from? The root cause is the energy that we're using, right? Regardless of how you compute, regardless of how you're using it, the root cause is the energy that you use. And if you're able to use renewable energy, then you're solving for a significant proportion of the problem. But as we continue to generate AI solutions, we're not looking at the root cause. And to me, we have to decarbonize AI from that. And so that's the challenge that we have, right? And we see it across the entire industry. It reminds me when we had blockchain. Remember when blockchain came out, we're all like, oh my God, look how much energy it's using. Well, if we know this now, what can we do to develop the solutions in a manner that enables you to do that? And then there's more issues with that, because now you get into the grid, you get into policy, you get into all of these complicated structures, but we need to simplify to be able to figure it out. So I totally respect what you're saying. I think that it's our responsibility to look at that in an integrated way to come up with a solution.
Absolutely, and we need to enable the people who are building these solutions to do it in a way that leads to less energy consumption when the solution is being used. Like in blockchain, it's quite energy intense when it comes to cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
when it's used, in our case, like green token is a solution for transparency across the entire value chain with regard to environmental and social aspects and standards, then it's less energy intense. And we have offerings not only for our own developers, but available for all to do the programming in a way which leads to less energy consumption. To be as efficient as possible, that is a clear responsibility we all have in the IT sector.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here because I think it's an important point. And at Google, we always think about AI and our approach being both bold and responsible. So bold is there's a huge opportunity here for individuals, governments, cities, companies to generate massive benefit on the back of AI. But we absolutely need to do it responsibly. Now, we are at a bit of an inflection point. No one knows where AI is going to go in terms of the growth and the energy use. But I do think it's always important to put this in perspective. So if you look at the last IEA data centers around the world account for about 1 to 1.3% of energy use and nearer to sort of 0.1 to 0.3% of emissions, because the Googles, Microsoft, Amazons, and others around the world have invested, some of the biggest buyers of clean energy. But we're really focused on what we can do to reduce the impact of AI. So to put it in perspective, we focus on model optimization. So we've got tried and tested practices that are proven to reduce energy use by 100 times and emissions by 1,000 times. And actually AI is a big enabler of that. So to your point, we have something called carbon intelligent load shifting that uses AI to look at what are the compute jobs we need, what is the clean energy available around the world on an hourly basis, and automatically shift those jobs around. So whilst we're bringing clean energy to the grid, we can make best use of what's there. We're also very much focused on the infrastructure itself, whether that is the chipsets. We develop our own silicon, our latest tensor processor unit, which are the key processors for AI, 67% more efficient than TPU5 equivalent, and that was more efficient than the model before. But a Google data center, just put it in perspective, is about 1.8 times as efficient as a typical enterprise data center. And compared to 5 years ago, we have almost 4 times as much compute power for the same amount of energy. And then we're also focused on emissions more generally. So Google, we already operate on 100% renewable electricity on a global annual basis. We're actually moving to what we call 24/7 carbon-free, sourcing clean energy locally every hour of every single day. So that's a huge step up. And we have an ambition to be net zero by 2030. So, we're working across all of these aspects. They're not easy, and we're making good progress.
And I would just add, this topic is not going anywhere. So I think we're in early days now, and we can see the power of collaboration and the necessity for collaboration. So if we follow through kind of the product build from the software and the code, and then how you might collaborate with Green Software Foundation and others in this space to make sure that you're building that code in the most efficient way so it can scale to near zero when not in use, that application, through to then how is it hosted and what is that data center running on? How is it using techniques such as liquid immersion cooling to reduce water use as well as energy use? And then all the way through to what's the end user using, right? Are they powering their laptop or their tablet with renewable energy? So it's following that all the way through and seeing which stakeholders do I need to work with at different stages. And I think, it's really a collaboration piece now, but the challenge is on us, right? We can't justify these huge jumps in power use and energy use and water use just for crafting an email in a better way. We have to find the use cases that can justify this jump in energy and water that is required for AI, while also trying all times to minimize that and find ways to make that more efficient.
So I'm going to go off script slightly here because it feels like this is it's often described as the new industrial revolution, isn't it? It's the latest revolution, but it's happening in a time where we know how important it is to be sustainable, to be responsible. We have a responsibility there. Do you feel that's something that everyone is appreciating in sort of the rush to get AI into everything? There's barely a new system that crosses my desk which isn't infused with AI in some way. Do you feel we've got that responsibility to get this right at this point? It's a very broad question. Daniel?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We definitely feel that responsibility, and customers would like to see that and expect that from SAP. Here, our headquarters is in Germany. We are a European-based company, but acting globally. And maybe we could come up with from an ethical point of view, to have the right balance between the Chinese and the US way. Yeah, how to deal with data, data privacy, data protection, all these elements where we have quite a history, how we deal with super sensitive business critical data of our customers in a way which is an ethical way, which is for the good, to create transparency, explainability, having the human in the loop. So we have defined the 10 principles and applying the UNESCO 10 principles when it comes to the ethical use of AI. And I'm hosting that. Yeah, it is not with the business AI unit. It is in order to ensure no interest of conflict. That's with me as the SAP's Chief Sustainability Officer. And here we go through each and every high-risk use case with a steering committee I'm hosting and having as well an external AI ethics panel in place, helping us as sparring partner to do the right things. And it's a journey. We are at the beginning of that journey. Even we came out with our AI ethics policy already and the first principles back in 2018. But it is important that it's expected from our customers. And we need to show that it's really a positive use and not being misused for the negative. And this is a risk. People are concerned about that in society. And we need to find answers to these questions. Yeah, and there it's always good and great to have these concrete cases, like you all mentioned these concrete cases. Like in another case I briefly touched during my keynote in the morning is that we have a very heterogeneous, unmature landscape when it comes to data, and to have real actuals and not just average-based, spend-based data. Going forward, we will have this hybrid world of actuals and and averages. And here AI can help. In our case, we have a carbon emission mapping tool based on AI, seeing that the data are not part of your ERP system or of your business processes. So automatically getting the data out of a third-party life cycle analysis database to be feeded in, and that leads to better business decisions, to better business outcomes, and that is more sustainable. So we need to show these concrete cases.
I also think responsibility with regards to AI is having the resources and access to implement AI. Not every country has that, right? And so there's an economic divider here. I mean, let's be real. And when you look at how AI is executed, it's the companies that have the resources, they're larger, they're bigger, and where does the responsibility lie? Because other countries may be saying, I'm just trying to catch up. I'm trying to get to economic development in my country, and we don't even have access. So responsibility to me has a huge ethical component, like you were saying, and we need to think about it holistically, right? And how do we include those communities and those countries that don't have access to have access in an equitable manner? Now, you know, we know, and there have been studies that when AI, there's cultural differences in terms of when you execute AI, right? If the American usage versus the European usage versus Asia Pacific, it's different because how you code is according to your culture and values. So how do we, you know, there's issues here that we have to talk about and figure out. And responsibility is, yes, we take responsibility as a larger company, but we also have the responsibility to be inclusive.
Just building on that point, I mean, I fully agree. And actually, it's one of the advantages of the cloud in which we can make it available. I mean, it's interesting mentioning you've had your AI principles since 2018. Google's been AI first since 2017, which is, I think, when our AI principles came out. And so, like, AI is the big topic now. But let's be clear, many of us have been working in this space for many years and already thinking about these topics. And I think you'll see, you know, a lot of call from the industry for strong regulation. And there is regulation. There's the EU AI Act. There's regulation coming in the UK, regulation in the US. And I think, you know, we all recognise the need for strong regulation. We need to make sure it's the right regulation. But absolutely, I think we all feel the responsibility, and because there's a huge opportunity here, and I think we're sort of on the responsibility side, and I hope we can go back to the sort of the exciting, you know, the opportunity side. But yes, we have to do this well because there is a huge opportunity, but we need to do it well.
Just allow me one comment when it comes to regulation. Regulation will be always, don't get me wrong, but behind us. So we as IT technology companies, we are ahead of that, and we need to help the policymakers, the governments to understand these topics, and having that own ethical responsibility from our side.
I really agree with that, but I think regulation will always be catching up to the new applications of technology. And when we design something, we might have a particular use in mind, but that doesn't mean that we're taking into account the potential use cases that there are. So we like to talk about things like clean tech and green tech and sustainable tech. Well, technology is neutral. It's the application of technology that can be positive or negative from a sustainability perspective. And even the term of sustainability has so much within it, right? So it can be good from an E, not so much from an S. So there's all of these considerations and trade-offs. And I think absolutely it's on us to think at the design stage, what are the potential use cases that there could be, the potential implications, and also as we're building that, things like inherent biases are a problem that's been around for a long time with AI. I think when I think back to 2017-18, that's more the topic of discussion with ethical AI was around those biases. And when you apply AI, you really compound those biases that are already existing. So it's really something to think about from the design stage, but a critically important part.
And I'm not sure if you guys can see my notes from here, because we were wanting to move on to collaboration next, and it was something you've mentioned already, and Daniel, you were setting that up very nicely for me. How important is it, though, that there is this collaboration between AI companies, sustainability experts, the policymakers? Everyone's got a say on it. How critical is it that there is real and effective collaboration between all those parties to make sure that we've got something that is really fit for purpose and under control? I'll throw that out to everybody.
No one can solve it alone, so it's clearly a team sport. We need to collaborate, we need to help each other, or challenge each other, doing it in a transparent, open fashion, and collaboration is so crucial here.
What did the pandemic teach us? We're global. One pandemic we could not solve for one country. We would not be sitting here now if we did not have technology that enabled us on a global basis to come up with solutions. We wouldn't be sitting here. So when we look at this, AI, or we look at climate change, we have to collaborate globally to develop the solution. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us are going to sit on stage here and go, no, we shouldn't collaborate. I mean, I think it's hugely important. And you sort of mentioned all sorts of different stakeholder groups there. And I think, right across the piece, there's already a lot, we collaborate with SAP, we collaborate with Microsoft, we collaborate with many people because it's the only way we're going to get to where we need to be. At Google, we're interesting as well because we actually provide, a cloud platform with many tools that other organizations then come and build their solutions on. So, many of the solutions that are sort of sitting outside and showcasing their tools are built on sort of Google technology and the data analytics we can bring. I think, we've touched on the policy side, and I think, policy and policymakers have a huge role to play here. We've done a lot of work in sort of talking to policymakers, putting out recommendations for policymakers. And to Daniel's point, policies is always going to be one step behind, but we've got a responsibility to share our knowledge, share our expertise, be challenged as well. And so I think we do a lot in that space because we think, again, to get this right, it's hugely important. But yeah, collaboration is going to be key here because, and I think sustainability is really interesting because compared to other parts of business, there is so much collaboration that does take place. So.
Yeah, actually, even within the business, there's very little you can do from a sustainability team. It's a lot of influencing and collaborating, and that's how you make it a success. And that's true outside of the business as well. And really, when it comes to such a fast-moving, evolving, and new topics such as AI and its application with sustainability, I think a key word for me with sustainability is connected. So when we think about sustainability risks, they are rarely risks just for one group of stakeholders. They, impacts as well. They will impact other groups of stakeholders. So, it's really important to think about what are some of those knock-on effects in sustainability that might not be the primary use case when you're thinking about AI, but might be other implications, like I said.
I found it interesting to learn that a customer of us, MSG, it's a consulting implementation managed service provider, using our Systemd Control Tower, being a co-innovator as well, together with others, helping us on the AI-based reporting generator. And they now develop an own AI-based solution. Do you know for what? For greenwashing detector. Yeah. interesting application, yeah. So to identify if a company is talking blah blah and it sounds great, but it's in fact greenwashing, and they are using AI in order to identify that. That was for me quite a fascinating use case I just recently learned.
And you dropped that into the conversation just before I go to questions. Thank you, Daniel. That was fascinating, though. Right. As I said, time is getting on, so I will throw to questions from the room. I know we've been a little bit glass half empty at times with this conversation, but I think it's important that we reflect both sides. The potential is huge, as you say. Of course, we're going to say everyone should collaborate. It's important we look at both sides of all these discussions. So, if I can look to the room and see, do we have any questions? I cannot see under the lights. Do we have a hand?
There's hands over there.
There we go. Oh, right at the front. That's very helpful. There we go.
Hi, Kate Martin, Sustainability Manager for Envision Pharma Group. I just wanted to understand, when you're looking at these big data sets that you're loading in, are bias gaps becoming really visible? Where, for example, like I know there was a book called The Invisible Woman, and it was about a lot of medical research being done on male cells, and they identified that actually it could be quite useful to start to expand that so that we could actually see some of the research on female cells as well. But I don't know whether some of this big data are things that are starting to come up where you need to have a lot more research.
So that's an interesting question, because I went to Stanford University and I have some colleagues who are there looking at data bias in AI. And it definitely exists because AI is built on the data that we put into it. And if we're only putting in data primarily of information that might be male-oriented and do not include female or other binary information, it will be biased because it's built on our data. So a key component for solving this is, how do you make sure the data is inclusive across the categories so that it does not have a bias? Because we're building it right now. We're building AI literally every single day. So that's a huge opportunity in my mind, and we're still learning. This is not done. This is we're in it right now. So, you know, I look at that as being an opportunity that we have to work on it right now.
And what we are doing is to use technology to overcome that bias, which is embedded because of our society.
Yeah.
And it can't be the case that Daniel comes out with this AI ethics policy, and now each and every developer at SAP has the policy next while programming. Look, we need to automate, otherwise we will never scale. And for that, we develop these tools as a response exactly to your question.
What I would go that we should be formulating. What I would say is, I think this goes back to the collaboration piece again, in terms of, you know, how do we work with the right experts in this space? How do we fund the research? You know, we do a lot of research ourselves, but how do we fund other research? How do we work with the right parties, whether that is academia, whether that is cities, whether that is people in the healthcare system, or whatever it may be? So that's again where the collaboration and partnership is really key here to get it right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that AI is only as good as the data that it's learning from and built on, right? So there is a piece around how do we make sure that, you know, diverse mindsets, populations are represented in the people who are building AI tools at the moment. And there is a piece of work there, obviously, with the technology sector in particular, to make sure that we represent better the communities that AI serves, which is, yeah, really global.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid we are running really, really tight on time, so we are going to have to move on. But a huge thank you, Sophie, Adam, Daniel and Faith. Really appreciated your company. Thank you.